This might sound too good to be true. How to potentially double or even triple your team's productivity without spending a single dollar. Yeah, it's true. Many organizations are sitting on a gold mine of untapped potential, and the key to unlocking it costs nothing. Today, I'll make the business case for something many leaders dismiss as soft or optional. That touchy feely stuff. Showing you concrete numbers on how you can dramatically boost performance, innovation, and retention starting tomorrow without spending a dime. Let's dive in. So, first, what are some of the challenges that we see? What are some of the complaints that we hear from leaderships, from companies? What do they see as standing in the way, not allowing the company to really reach high levels of potential? And one topic that comes up all the time is employee disengagement. They don't care. They're just here for the paycheck. There's just no inspiration, no creativity. Yeah, it's just a lack of caring. People are not engaged, and I've witnessed it. This is true. It's real. Gallup reports confirm this. And this is a real phenomenon. It's a real problem. Disengaged employees cost U.S. companies between 450 and 550 billion annually in lost productivity. If we address it, though, and we can, we, for example, can implement engagement programs in mid-sized company. Okay. Can we see any benefits from that? Yeah, definitely. We can see, for example, $2 million in improvement in productivity and efficiency with a zero budget increase. The increases that we see, the benefits that we see, translate into real dollars. That's the point. And we can do it without having to spend anything, without having to allocate a special budget in order to make this happen. So, one of the things that we see is that in environments that are fear based, neuroscience confirms that when employees experience fear or stress, their cognitive function drops by 37%. And that reduces their problem solving ability and their efficiency. So we're literally impairing a worker's ability to think when we constantly keep them in this environment of fear, because survival becomes the important thing, not solving the problems, not working, not being creative, not coming up with cool ideas. Who comes up with cool ideas when you're trying to survive? You're trying to just simply come up with whatever's going to keep you alive. That's the priority. There's a lot of blockages that happen in people's ability to work when there's a lack of psychological safety. Google has proved this. They had a project, Project Aristotle. The number one predictor for high performing teams is psychological safety. Teams that lack it show 50% less likely to generate new ideas. Another thing that we see all the time is turnover, high turnover. Replacing employees costs up to 150% of the salary because it's not just finding another person. It's the lost knowledge, the recruitment, the training expenses, getting people up to speed again. There's a real loss. There's a real investment every time that we lose somebody. There's tremendous turnover when people are in this environment of fear. You can have a financial services firm reducing their turnover by 35%, for example, if they implement an empathy-based leadership training. And that will save them millions of dollars. There's also healthcare and absenteeism. These things impact the workers' availability to do and do the work that they need to do. But when they're under constant stress and under constant fear, yeah, things are going to happen. Employees in high stress environments, we see 50% higher health-related issues. Costs rise. Absenteeism increases 26%. And then there's the other one that I hear all the time, accountability. Oh, people just simply don't care. They're not passionate about the work, and they're not accountable for their work. They don't hold themselves accountable. Well, of course not. In the command and control environment, all that people do is survive. That's the priority. That's the thing that people are focused on. When you're in that kind of environment and somebody's micromanaging, somebody is driving, directing what we need to do, and there's this fear-based culture that we create, well, people, all that they're looking to do is just the minimum in order to survive, in order to make it yet another day. Leaders assume that strict policies increase accountability. However, the research shows they increase blame avoidance, errors, and turnover. I remember a case where literally I was sitting in an open space environment, and I could see the manager, the supervisor, berating this worker, telling them to just get something done right away. And the worker kept trying, really trying very hard to explain that this was not a good idea, that this was something that they didn't want to do. Clearly, there was some reservation. It was very obvious. And at some point in the conversation, they just got told, you get paid to do, not to think, just get it done. Wow. Okay. So the worker just went ahead and did it. Sure enough, bad things happened. And of course, after that, there's a retrospective. Is how did this happen? How could we get here? What's going on? They asked the worker, "Did you know that this would happen?" And said, "Yes." Then why did you do it? Because I was told to. And people look at this as lack of accountability. No, it's not. People are just doing the thing that they need to do in order to survive the moment. Another thing that I see very telltale, very classic, is when I go into engagements and the word that I hear people refer to their supervisor is boss. My boss said this, my boss said that. Oh, according to my boss, the boss. They never refer to them by their name. That to me is very telltale. It really it tells me something about the culture that's going on and the type of relationship and the type of power relationship that exists. And in that type of environment, I don't see engaged, intelligent people who are really creative, coming up with new ideas. I see people who do the bare minimum to stay in line with everything. You don't see great growth in that kind of environment. You just see a very stagnated environment that's barely doing the minimum to get along. It's fear. People are not engaged in thinking. So the most expensive line item in your budget isn't in your balance sheet. It's the productivity tax of workplace toxicity. That's the key. And we can fix that. It doesn't cost anything. Does your workplace have productivity tax problem? Share in the comments. Give us a sense of how much of a percentage do you think it's impacting your productivity, your creativity, your ability to do more in your company? I'd be curious to hear. So let's look at how to, is there any evidence that avoiding these type of heavy environments, these environments that are guided by fear, by command, by mandate, by strictness, is there any benefit to removing all that? Can we see is there any evidence? And the answer is yes. We see tremendous performance gains in environments of high trust. So there was an example is Paul Zak at Harvard Business Review did some research and found that high trust workplaces had 76 higher engagement percentage, 50% lower turnover, and 2.5 times higher productivity. Brain Science did another study. And what they discovered is that when people feel psychologically safe, the brain activity, when you look at the areas of the brain that are processing information and processing the action, they see a shift from the amygdala-driven defense and survival areas to the prefrontal cortex problem-solving areas. And that increases creativity and efficiency. So the MRI studies show us very clearly that psychological safety boosts pattern recognition, learning speed, decision-making accuracy by over 30%. So the science is clear, black and white on this. Creating non-toxic work environments absolutely leads to better quality work, better engagement, better work satisfaction, but the satisfaction leads to better work. So it's costing us money when we don't create those type of environments. Another thing that we see is things that environments that don't have a good psychological safety, that they're very toxic, I think that it's impossible. Those kind of things just never happen. And so they seem almost miraculous. Let me tell you, I've experienced it throughout my career. Self-organization in teams and the intrinsic motivation to do the right thing and to do a good job. These are the kinds of things that happen when we create psychologically safe environments. In all my years as director and CEO, not once have I had to ask any of my team members to work extra hard, long hours, whatever's needed in order to deal with a critical situation. Not once. And it's, I remember specifically one case. There was this one team member, hadn't had a date in a long time. And the date was happening this particular day. And of course, like clockwork, there was a big problem. Some disk array units needed work, and they had the expertise to do it. I didn't want them to stay. I genuinely didn't. I didn't ask. And from their side, they made the decision to stay, which was the correct decision. It was the right thing to do. They had the necessary skill in order to resolve the issue. To this day, I remain tremendously grateful and appreciative of the fact that they did it. And I never had to ask. Why? Because they really had the pride and the engagement and the caring and the accountability on their work. These are the kinds of things that we get when people are happy, when we create those work environments. There are companies, software development, that have consciously made a decision to move to empathy first management, resulting in 40% higher productivity. And the specifics that I'm thinking, 5 times their stock prices. And that's the thing that we see. When there is a conscious effort to move the company into a psychologically safe, abandoning the work toxicity and moving to a psychologically safe work environment, we tend to see this increase in company value. We see also customer satisfaction increasing 30 to 40%. Those kind of things definitely happen. I'm reminded of a short, really short video. I encourage you to take a look. It's from Simon Sinek. And just search for Simon Sinek Noah. And what he relates is how he goes into this hotel, and Noah's a barista. And he's always asking Noah, like, do you like your job? And Noah responds, I love my job. And of course, he wants to find out, well, why? Why do you love your job? And one of the things that he says in the conversation is that a manager, whenever managers go by, they don't ignore him, and they certainly don't order him around. They just ask, hey, how are you doing? Is there anything that you need? Can I help you in any way? And that question alone, the caring, the connection, the acknowledgement, the validation as a human being, and let alone the caring to say, hey, can I help you in anything? It just makes them feel that they can be themselves. And that inspires them to be themselves. And as part of the story, and it relates how they had worked at another hotel where no, they just felt like it was a transactional relationship, and they just did the bare minimum in order to get by. This is the same human being, different hotels. What's different? Leadership. It's the kind of environment that's been created that brings out the best in people. And that doesn't cost anything. We just have to be nice. So they're compounding returns that we get from having empathy. And this is one thing I really don't understand. How can we not put ourselves in others' shoes and consider the behavior that we're exhibiting, the impact that we'll have on them? So I really challenge anybody who has seen this or who's engaged in it. This is deeply entrenched in us. And I want to be clear. It's, yes, of course, I'm sure that there's some not very nice people in the world. And there is this legendary, it goes by thousands of years, that has been ingrained that if you're a leader, you have to be this tough persona, the overpowering persona. That comes from the fields and having to manhandle the oxen in order to get things done, or enforce labor and having to manhandle people into getting the work done that they didn't want to do. That's where it comes from, and we've kept that. That's what we associate with the leader being the one that's leading the charge. It's well, hopefully we're a little more civilized at this point, and we don't need those things. So a lot of people who engage in it do it primarily because they believe that that's what's expected of them as leaders. And the reality is that when we engage in empathy, when we put ourselves in people's shoes and we consider, if I'm being yelled at, do I feel light? Do I feel inspired? Do I feel creative? Do I feel like I have the energy to come up with a bright idea to do more? I don't know about you, but I certainly wouldn't. And I can understand perfectly that if people are working in an environment where their leadership treats them that way, then it trickles down, right? It's when it doesn't trickle down, that's when we see the real changes. Recently, I was having dinner with some friends, and the work environment, not particularly good, actually very bad. And they were commenting how one of their team members is like in a bubble. They're like saying, "Oh my God, this was wonderful. I'm having a great time. I feel so energized, and I want to do this, and I want to do that, I want to do the other thing." And they're just thinking to themselves, "It's like, what planet are they in? I want to be in that planet because mine is hell." And that's the point. That particular person is creating the environment for that team member to feel that. And as a result, they're getting wonderful work from them. As leaders, we create that. We have the opportunity to really shape the environment that people are working in so that they deliver their best work. Not because we ask them to, certainly not because we order them to, but because they want to. And that, all that it takes is treating people as human beings in a decent way. So empathy leads to higher retention, better teamwork, and continuous innovation. These are the benefits that multiply over time, and these are the things that we want desperately in companies. So try to think, what is what is the environment in which you have felt the most productive? And when you think of that environment, what made it different? What made it make you feel productive, that you could perform at your highest levels? And speaking of a multiplying effect, of course, there's AI. You always hear me talking about how AI is it has this scaling ability and is going to multiply everything. And when it comes to this, yes, absolutely, it has that effect. Because consider that in psychologically safe environments, we see adoption rates for AI triple, triple fold. Okay. This comes from an MIT Sloan study. What happens is when employees are able to embrace the AI tools as opposed to fear them, now creativity kicks in. Now the curiosity of, oh, how am I going to use this one? How am I going to connect it? What can I do with it? Because there isn't the fear of using the tool. One of those fears could be the fear that all of the work that I'm doing is just the preparation for getting rid of me. If we address those kinds of things up front, if we demonstrate that we're bringing in these tools so that people can be more creative, so that they can have the opportunity and the ability to deliver higher quality and more intricate and more clever work, as opposed to this is just going to replace you. If we address that, we eliminate the fear. Now we have the opportunity to really leverage the power of these tools. AI works best when employees feel comfortable experimenting. It's the fear that reduces the AI-driven innovation. So if we want to see successful transformations, let's address that first before we introduce the tools. Companies with high psychological safety drive 40% faster AI adoption rates and have fewer implementation failures for these reasons because they're engaged. They really want to participate. They're curious to figure out how to get the most out of these tools, as opposed to, whether intentionally or not, undermining the tools because they really don't want to see them succeed. So how can we tell if we're moving in a good direction as we're trying to improve the environment? And there's different approaches. A recommended approach, although it's not my favorite, is looking at Net Promoter Scores. There's a lot of controversy about the efficiency, the efficacy of NPS scores. So, with avoiding that kind of a controversy, I can just say that yes, if your company has NPS scores, you can certainly look at them. You can look at psychological safety surveys, turnover rates, for example. These are These are indicators that you can use. However, the concern that many have raised is that, especially in environments that are particularly toxic, the results that you're getting may not really be indicative of reality. And therefore, you could end up with your watermelon reports. They look great on the outside, green on the outside, but they're red on the inside. So be careful with that. Perhaps a better metric would be to see if there's a correlation. If you can see a correlation between your customer satisfaction and the company's revenue, especially as I mentioned before, if you've engaged in a deliberate effort to improve in this area, to create a psychologically safe environment, and as you're doing it, as you're succeeding, as you have success, you're starting to see better comments from your customers and an increasing revenue. These are really good signs that we tend to see happen. It's not a rule, but they do tend to go hand in hand. So how do you do this? What are the kinds of activities that you can engage in that can help you get there? One of the practices is active listening. Leaders who listen actively and attentively build trust. Remember the four pillars of Agile. When you are able to establish good context with people, you avoid misunderstandings. And the studies show you can avoid them by as much as 60%. It's really dramatic. And that comes from active listening. So if you engage in a practice of active listening, you can really make sure that you're in sync with your teams, therefore reducing the amount of friction that comes from misunderstandings. Another thing that you can do is high trust check-ins. Just simple 10-minute, 5-10-minute check-ins. And whenever you engage, that can really boost the participation, people's engagement. We see some statistics around 20, 30%, somewhere around there. And all it takes is a few minutes just to check in. And the check-in it doesn't have to be just about work. Better if it can be something casual, something personal. It reinforces our human connections. And when we have that, that builds on trust. When we have trust, then we can build from that. And we can really see wonderful results from that. Another thing that can help is we implement open decision-making transparency. It is that people, everybody in the company, teams, they understand the why behind things are being done. And that shows significant increases in their engagement and their initiative to ensure that whatever it is that we're doing succeeds. Because think about it, if we're not second guessing what we're doing, why we're doing it, if we're clear about it, we understand what's going on, there's a whole layer of questions that we don't have to ask because we already know. And we're not second guessing and potentially second guessing incorrectly. Don't forget, it's human nature. When we don't know something and we have concerns, we fill the void with the worst case scenarios. That wastes tremendous amount of time, and that creates a lot of politics. And then this one said this and that one said that, and now you've got all this confusion going all over the place. We can stop all that by being open, transparent. Transparency is really critical, and it really helps. So, what's one practice, one empathic practice that you could implement tomorrow? Let us know in the comments. And if you'd like to learn more about how to implement this active listening thing, click on one of these and I'll be happy to tell you all about it.